Morning everybody, well I think it's morning anyway, and welcome to another video. Sorry it's been so long since the last video, but Matt and myself have had a lot on. He has been finishing his course at college, and I've set up my own photography business, so it's been pretty hectic. But anyway, we should now have both more time to produce more videos going forward. Anyway, just after 4 AM in the morning, I've just been picked up by Dave, and we're en route to Stokesley to pick up Miles, who's travelled this morning from Northallerton to meet us. After we pick up Miles, we'll be on our way to Scotland to photograph one of the UK's most colourful and elusive birds, the Kingfisher. More often than not, most people see of a Kingfisher is a flash of blue and a high-pitched pip-pip as they fly past you at high speed along our streams. For such a colourful little bird, they are hard to spot when they are perched along riverbanks motionless looking for small fish. This is the second video we have produced where I've provided a voiceover, and it's really as a courtesy to my two travelling companions this morning. And later, of course, when we are in a hide location, to try and keep any talking to a minimum, as the birds are very nervous and due to their close proximity to us, very skittish and easily spooked. While we were travelling along this morning, I thought I would talk about what we're hopefully going to see and do this morning. A good friend of mine, Alan McFadden, who owns and runs Scottish Photography Hides at a Kingfisher hide just over the border into Scotland, which is today's destination. Although seeing a kingfisher is never guaranteed, the hide is in a location known for its kingfishers, and of all the times I've been to this location, I've never failed to photograph them. Depending on the time of year, tides, weather, etc., you might only get a few visits over the course of a day, but occasionally, like our 3-day visit in June of 2017, we timed it just right and were rewarded with over 150 visits each day, as the adults were backwards and forwards feeding and teaching their young to fish, which was amazing to see. We even had 2 dives in at the same time, which is very rare. What makes this hide special though is Alan has constructed an infinity diving pool for the kingfishers, where you can not only take amazing perch shots, but you can also capture shots of kingfisher diving into and coming out of the water, including some cool reflections. I am planning on showing you the setups we use later in this video when we get to the hide, and hopefully, fingers crossed, the results from today's visit. We are about to arrive at the pickup location now for Miles, so I think that's all for the background information. We have about another 2.5 hours to go before we arrive at our destination, so I will see you all there shortly. I'm back. Right, we are now over the border into Scotland, and we have about another 25 minutes to go before we arrive at the location. Looking at the weather, it's a bit dull and grey, which could be a problem for taking diving shots today, as you really need really fast shutter speeds. So unless you're willing to use really high ISOs, if the conditions are too dark, it's usually better to forget the diving shots and concentrate on capturing perched, posed shots. Well, it's about 7:30 now, and we have just unloaded our gear from the car, and Dave has got to park up in a nearby lay-by. Before he gets back, I'll just take you for a walk down to the hide. The hide is in a great location, and you can't really be seen from the road, so it's very private and secluded, ideal for kingfishers. The hide is perfect for about 3 photographers and their gear, all in relative comfort. Right, the hide is situated on the banks of a tidal river, and depending on the time of year, the sun is mostly behind, which is ideal for lighting the birds. Later on in the day, especially in summer, the sun does come around far enough to about the 11 o'clock position, creating backlighting, which can be really nice as well. Well, here we are, our home for the next 12 hours or so. The hide is split into 2 areas really. The far end of the hide is where you set up for the diving shots. Alan has built a long infinity reflection pool at the same height as the hide, with about 1 inch or 2 inches of water, and situated about halfway along its length is a deeper area bucket, which is filled with fish. Over this bucket is a perch where the kingfisher dives from into the water. From this area you can capture the kingfisher either going into the water or emerging from the water, hopefully with a fish. I would say the ideal lens is a 70-200 or 100-400 lens set between 135 and 200mm, depending on what type of shot you want to capture, such as including the kingfisher reflection as it enters or emerges from the water, or if you prefer a closer in shot with the water at the bottom of the shot. I will show a few of the typical shots you can get here at the end of this section. You really can't shoot the kingfisher on the perch from this location unless that's all you want, because you would really need to move your camera, which could cause the bird to fly away. We have had kingfishers sat less than a foot from us while shooting here, so lack of movement, sound inside the hide is crucial for a successful day of shooting. The bit of wood we have across the pool is our manual focusing aid, which is removed once all cameras are correctly manually focused. Right, you can now see our 3 cameras all set up here ready to shoot. You position your cameras on either beam bags or a head secured to the hide frame with a clamp, which positions your lens about 2 or 3 inches above the water level, and you don't move the camera while you're using this setup. It's also best to set your camera to manual focus for these shots. There is no time to use autofocus as a Kingfisher is off the perch into the water and back on the perch again in around 2 to 3 seconds. So I would suggest that you focus around the middle of the deep bucket, which gives you the best chance to maximise your depth of field and capture a sharp Kingfisher shot diving in or coming out. A camera with a fast frame rate and a good buffer is also advantageous, as the best way to capture the shot is to start shooting as the Kingfisher leaves the perch and just keep shooting through the dive, the emergence, and then stop when the Kingfisher is back on the perch again. Even using this spray and pray method, you get more fills than wins, and even at 14 frames per second with my 1DX Mark II or the Sony A9 at 20 frames per second, you're not guaranteed the shot you want. A cable release is also a really good idea, which allows you to watch the perch stroke birds without leaning forward and comfortably to press the shutter button, which could also move the camera and upset your composition if you are just using a beam bag for support for the camera. Because the bucket is about 9 inches wide and 6 inches long, there's still a lot of luck involved, as the Kingfisher has a lot of scope for entering and leaving the bucket outside your depth of field range. If the light levels allow, I usually set my camera to 1/2000th of a second shutter speed minimum and an f-stop of f9, f10 on full frame to maximise my depth of field. But this is Scotland, and that's very rarely the case, so it's always a trade-off between shutter speed, aperture and ISO. What I will say though is that shutter speed is a key here. There is no point capturing a blurry Kingfisher, so I usually sacrifice the f-stop aperture first, going down to f2.8, and after that increasing the ISO to a point I no longer feel happy with. After this, I will lower the shutter speed to 1/1500th of a second, but that's as low as you can really go unless you want artistic blurry shots. As a side to this, if you are using a 1.5 crop or a micro four thirds sensor, you have the added benefit of being able to lower your f-stop to say 4 on a 1.5 crop and 2.8 on a micro four thirds and still have enough depth of field to maximise your chances with the added benefit of getting more light, so higher shutter speeds at lower ISOs. If the light is bad on this setup, then I would really suggest you forget about the diving shots and concentrate on capturing really nice perch shots, which leads me nicely into the next setup. But just before we move on here, are a few shots I've captured using this setup on various visits. I hope you like them. Right, moving on now. We have moved over to the other section of the hide, and you can now see a setup for the perch stroke pose shots. I've left the hide door open just a little bit to let light in just while I'm filming this section, but it was closed prior to any bird arriving. We have also changed lenses now, and the 70-200s have been replaced with 400 and 500mm fast aperture primes for maximum background separation and bokeh. I'll also say that the 100-400 lens or similar zoom, like a 150-600 or a 200-500, is still good here, and you don't need one of these mega expensive primes to capture great shots. Just make sure that you've got 300mm minimum focal length on your lens. As you can see, Dave on the far right is using his 100-400 Sony G Master along with his Sony A9 camera. Miles has his D5 and Nikon 500 f4, and I've got my Canon 400 f2.8, and I'm currently using it with the 5D Mark IV. But a little bit, I decided to switch to the 1DX Mark II for its better ISO performance, as it's still quite a dull day. Camera settings wise, you are now back in autofocus, and I set my cameras to AI Servo on Canon or AFC on Nikon Sony. This means that the AF doesn't lock, so while I'm half pressing the shutter button on the subject, any movement from the bird backwards and forwards is adjusted for by the autofocus settings on the camera. I also use this autofocus mode for photographing weddings and portraits, and it seems to work really well for me. For these perch shots, shutter speed is largely irrelevant here, as the birds don't move a great deal unless trying to kill a fish against a perch or diving off or coming back to the perch. I've had great shots here down to 1/60 of a second while the bird's being perched, which really makes these type of shots the best ones to do if the day is really dull. I also prefer a bright overcast day for perch shots, as it brings out a lot of detail in feathers, and you lose in harsh sunlight, and it provides more even illumination and softer light. The shot on the back of the camera, which hopefully you can see now, is a 1/1000th of a second, f5.6 and ISO 1600, and that was a brightish overcast day. Right, due to how Alan has built the hide, the background is sufficiently far behind the perches that even at f8 on full frame, you're going to get lovely separation of the bird from the background and full depth of field to cover the bird from front to back in a side profile. On a 1.5 crop camera, I would suggest 5.6 as a maximum, and on say a micro four thirds f4. But because of their smaller sensors, you will still get enough depth of field for the bird to be in sharp focus from front to back and create lovely background separation of the bird. Again, you can also choose to sacrifice a bit of blurry background bokeh quality for more depth of field by increasing your aperture if you wish. Say for instance, if the bird is facing you or as its back to you and looks over its shoulder to give a lovely side portrait. With this setup, you also have the option while the birds are away to go out and swap over to different perches to add a bit of variety into your shots for the day. And if you set up a long perch, you might be lucky to get 2 or maybe more kingfishers perched at the same time, possibly feeding young. I've put a few shots I've captured here on a video to finish off this part of the video, and just to show you the variation in shots you can capture from this spot. Stop. Well, that's the end of the day. It goes so quick. We're all packed up now and heading home. I would really like to thank Dave and Miles for the great company. A lot of photographers go out on their own, and that's great, but it's really awesome when you can share the experience with like-minded friends and other photographers. I love taking clients out on one-to-one and small group workshops and wildlife workshops and sharing their experiences when they see wildlife and visit new locations for the first time. If anybody would like to experience one of these workshops, then please contact me. The details are all below. All the information, again, is in the boxes below. I hope you have enjoyed this video and its insight into how most kingfisher shots you will see are actually taken. Is it cheating? I'll let you make your own mind up on that one, but I've spent many hours in the wild along riverbanks and captured a lot of great shots, but more often than not, I've sat there from dawn till dusk uncomfortably under camo netting and not got anything. This is great and I really love being out in the wild, but if you haven't got the time or the patience, a hide like this one that Alan has built really maximises your time and chances of getting some really great shots. Also, I would say your chances of getting diving shots in the wild are probably less than 1%, unless you build a similar setup of your own. I know a really good wild photographer that actually built 2 clear tanks in a river, one for him to sit in at water level and also for below water shots, and one for the diving. But I can say that this is probably not something that most photographers would even contemplate doing due to various logistics. Well, thanks again for watching. Please click subscribe, click the notification icon, like and add comments and questions. This all will help us grow this channel so we can start producing more content and get to that magic 1,000 subscribers when we will be doing our first giveaway. Bye for now and see you all hopefully on the next video shortly.